bring it back too far, the front end is just going to skate on you. You're not going to have enough weight on it to deal with the weight transition in the corners. So that's where the tricky part is. Now, before I ever go on the track, I've got my ride heights where they are. The only other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that nose weight. And usually with iRacing's nose weight, I'm going to start by cutting them somewhere in the neighborhood of in half. All right, I'm going to take that nose weight back to about a 13. And that is only a guess. It's just a starting spot. Because and once I do that, take that 13 back to that ballast forward back to a 13. Now you'll notice that your ride heights have changed. Now you got to go back to your right front ride height and bring it down. 2, 3 clicks, bring that left front ride height down. 1, 2 clicks. Now you'll notice that you've got 5.51 on the right, 5.52 on the left, which is close. What I'm going to do now is go to this right rear. Okay, and the spring perch offset on the right rear, the left arrow is going to click it up. Now that's going to be a 7.99 on the right rear. Now I'm going to tighten it back up, which I'll go into a little bit later. With the left rear spring perch offset, it's a 7.96 now, and click that left button and bring it up to a 7.99. Now you'll notice that now your front ride heights are exactly where you want them to be. 5.52, 5.52. Now your right rear is a 7.98, your left rear is a 7.99. That's no big deal. That's just that's semantics. Okay. Now you'll notice that your link slack is at 0, and your preload's at 0. Now go up there and check that attach. Click apply, and you'll see that your ride heights aren't changing that much. Your ride heights are now the car's freed up. The car's not going to be bound up in the corners. Now, as everybody, let me get everybody caught up here. You should have a 13 ballast forward, 13 inches. You should be 0 on the link slack, 0 on the preload, and your ride heights should be at a 552 across the front, 799, 798 across the rear. Is everybody right there with me?
I got lost with whenever we were going from the first time with ballast forward, and then when we went to the ride heights, I accidentally hit the wrong button, and I got lost from there.
Okay, that's no problem. Just hang on 1 second. I'm going to share this with everybody, and you can put it in there, and you'll see where you should be. And we can go over the little minute stuff about what to click. That's no problem. But I'm going to put this up there for everybody. That way you'll know exactly where you should be. All right, if y'all want to grab that set right there and put it in there, you'll see where you ought to be as far as what your ride height should look at. And your spring perch offsets, you can play with this, and as you know, when you get by yourself, you can play with them, find out which way the spring perch offset makes your ride heights go up, makes your ride heights go down, things like that. Now, but what you're wanting to do with the basic setup to get it to a point now, without even jumping on the track, we hadn't changed any springs, we hadn't changed any shocks, anything like that. All we're wanting to do now is to get this thing to a point where we can start working on making the car right for the way we drive the car. And that's the way it ought to look from the iRacing basic setup. What you're seeing right there and what I shared with you is the way it ought to look when it goes out on the track now. So what we need to do now is go out there, and we can take about 5 or 10 minutes, take that setup right there, and go out there and play with it. And remember what I told you about keeping the thing planted on the bottom, using that right foot. Don't be so fast getting from 0 throttle to full throttle. And go play with that and see how it feels different than the basic setup.
Wow, David, this is a whole different way than I've been approaching it. Great.
Yeah, wow, big thanks. Oh, yeah, no problem.
Hey, David, basically what you're looking at, or what we just did, is taking the ride height after you get your 0 on the preload. You want the front to be as low as they can and the rear to be as high as they can. Is that what I'm looking at, basically?
Exactly right. That's basically all it is getting that preload at zip and setting the front end down, the rear end up.
Is it because you're trying to get that bite for the rear tires?
Well, yeah, the bite for the rear and the front. Keeping that front end planted makes that car stay where it's supposed to. And keeping that rear end up is keeping that bite coming off.
Yeah, David, going through this, like you say, and you read it in the forum, that's one thing. But when you actually go through it now, a lot of stuff that I've been reading almost makes sense.
Oh my gosh. Hell of a lot more stable. Thank you, God. There is a God. And a God.
Totally different feel, and for the good.
This does feel a lot better.
Can this methodology be applied to the trucks as well as the A-Class sprint truck cars? Absolutely. It should translate to every car in the oval. I mean, it's just getting that front end planted, that rear end up, and getting the car neutral where the chassis is not bound up is basic everywhere you go. So it'll translate from truck all the way up to A-car.
So if I'm getting back on the throttle and it starts to push, I'm getting on the throttle too soon?
Not necessarily too soon, but too fast. You can get on the throttle soon, but don't get to the floor too fast. Just slow that progression down.
Anybody else bottoming out?
Yeah, we'll fix that. That's one of the things you'll run into, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
I have a question here. Now, are you guys, will this transference making a difference between a short run setup and a long run setup?
Now, this will help it over the long run, keeping this thing not bound up and keeping the chassis free and keeping it more stable like this, more neutral, will keep the car better over the longer run. So this will help you over the long run with this.
10-4.
So with the throttle, basically what you're doing is allowing the front end to grab the bite before you actually stop it, otherwise you're just going to be pushing. Exactly right, the front end and the rear end. It's always good to remember that just because your foot's on the floor does not mean you're going fast. If the foot goes to the floor and the rear tires are spinning, you're not going anywhere. But if you're half throttle and the tires are biting and pushing you forward, then you're going to be outrunning somebody with their foot on the floor, not with the car not biting. Steering with the throttle. Exactly right.
So if I'm barreling down in the corner and I let off and she pushes to the fence, I need to find a different let-off spot.
Yep, let off a little bit sooner. And when you do that, you'll be ready to get into the throttle a little bit sooner. That's where you'll kill people on passing, is when you're getting into the throttle about a quarter throttle before they're able to start pushing down on the throttle. You're actually going forward when they're still rolling through.
What about tires, David? I always started with the tires.
What do you mean started with the tires?
Well, I would try to get, the even tire where I'd put like a 20-lap run on it and try to get the tire temps and everything somewhat even across the tires.
Well, go out there and run 10 or 15, or run about 10 laps and just be smooth, run about 10 laps or so, and look at your tire wear.
Yeah, it seems like you'd want to have a setup you could drive around the track first before you start worrying about tires.
And that's exactly what he gave us.
Yep, and your tire wear will reflect that. Now that you've got the car this way, the tire wear is going to reflect it being more stable and not using it. And don't look so much at the temperature. I rarely even look at the temp. It's the tire wear that you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I was using Atlas for tire temps because what's in the sim doesn't really reflect what's really going on. I've always thought you want to get your inside, middle, and outside tire temps about even when you're in the turn in Atlas.
Yeah, that's where you want to start. One of the last things that you'll adjust is going to be your camber. And that's going to be also one of the first things you're going to adjust. But when you get to where you're running long runs, 25, 30 lap runs, and depending on what the car's doing, if the car's tightening up or loosening up, I'm going to show you a little trick you can do with that camber to adjust how the car reacts over a fuel run.
To me, the car is more comfortable to drive. It's actually, it's feeding off the track, like versus like what you said, all bound up and not be able to be responsive to what the track is doing.
Yeah, there's a way to fix that little, but like I said, if you've got a car that's bottoming out or scraping a little bit, you want to go about 5 or 10 laps. That may quit when the pressures come up. And if that does, that's a good thing because that means that front end is planted. So, but the only thing that turns into a bad thing is when that bottoming out bump, when it makes the car alter its path. If it makes the car jump and you lose where the car's at, then you've got to fix it. But if it's just a little scrape, then you're right. You know you're planted and it's not that big a deal.
Like at Pocono, it bounces all over the place.
Yeah, tracks like that can be fixed with going different spring rates, but we'll get into that here in a little bit also. But let you guys play with it for about another 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll clear the track and get into what we learned here, okay?
My tines aren't, I don't know about everybody else, my tines aren't falling off as fast.
Yeah, I think for me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it feels good so far, David.
A little tighter than normal.